Have you ever looked at one of your drawings and thought, why does it look so flat and lifeless? The answer lies in perspective. In architecture, perspective is not just a technique, it's the power that brings drawings to life. Today, we'll explore step by step how this power works.
Perspective, in its simplest definition, is the transfer of how our eyes perceive the world onto paper or a screen. When we look at an object, the ones closer appear larger, while the ones farther away look smaller. If we fail to capture this effect in a drawing, everything ends up the same size and doesn't resemble reality. To be able to do this, we need to know three fundamental concepts. Horizon line. This is the representation of our eye level in the drawing. Vanishing points. These are the points where parallel lines meet at infinity. Eye level. This is essentially us, the height of the viewer. When these three come together, the perception of three dimensions emerges on a two-dimensional surface. For example, when you're walking down a street, pay attention. The paving stones look large right at your feet, but as they go farther away, they appear smaller and seem to vanish at the horizon. This is perspective as we directly experience it with our eyes. In drawing, we simply replicate this. Now, I'm going to explain this to you simply. Since the parallel lines on this street appear to converge at a single point, we will create our drawing using one-point perspective. That's really how simple the basic idea is. For an architect, perspective is not just a drawing technique, but a tool of communication. Because when presenting a project, our drawings need to be realistic and convincing. Think about it. You're showing a client a house, but if you draw it without perspective, the space looks like a toy, artificial. Yet when you draw the same project with perspective, the person in front of you feels as if they are actually walking inside that room. So, perspective not only adds depth to a drawing, but also becomes our most powerful language when conveying our ideas and projects to others. Now, we'll take a look at how perspective emerged and its history. Perspective first emerged powerfully in art and architecture during the Renaissance period. Think about it. When we look at medieval paintings, we see figures placed side by side, but there is no sense of depth. Everything appeared two-dimensional, almost like an icon. So, how did this change? In the 15th century, Filippo Brunelleschi, through his experiments in Florence, was the first to systematize the rules of perspective in drawing. In particular, his famous drawing experiment of the baptistry in Florence is considered the beginning of modern perspective. Later, Leon Battista Alberti documented this method in his book De Pictura, On Painting. In other words, perspective was no longer just an optical illusion, but a technique based on a mathematical rule. We immediately saw its impact in the works of painters. For example, when we look at Masaccio's Holy Trinity, 1427 fresco, we experience for the first time a sense of three-dimensional depth on a church wall. It feels as if we could step right into the painting. Later, Leonardo da Vinci used a single vanishing point in The Last Supper to direct all attention toward the central figure of Jesus. This became one of the finest examples showing that perspective was not only a technique, but also a powerful tool for storytelling. In short, during the Renaissance, perspective opened up a kind of magical door. Artists and architects could now bring the real world to life on paper. With the Renaissance, artists not only painted, they managed to invite the viewer into the scene.
And today we still develop our drawings on the very same foundation. If your paper and pencils are ready, let's do a simple practice. Now, let's make a small comparison. Here we have a square drawn without perspective. As you can see, there's no sense of depth. But when we draw the same square with a horizon line and a vanishing point, it turns into a box. That's how simple yet striking the difference is. Now, imagine this example in spatial drawings. A room, a street, or a building, with perspective, it comes to life. Now I'm drawing another box from a different angle. Now, I'm going to use hatching as a simple shading technique. This easy method adds a lot to the drawing. Hand coordination exercises. Understanding perspective is important, but using your hand correctly while drawing is just as crucial. Here are a few simple yet effective exercises I recommend. Start with horizontal and vertical lines. Then move on to drawing ellipses. The most important thing to keep in mind during these exercises is to make the movement with your whole arm, not just your fingers or wrist. Drawing flows more smoothly and evenly when controlled by the larger muscles rather than the small ones. At first, it may be a bit challenging. Your lines might shake or not turn out as you want. But remember, the more you practice, the more your hand coordination improves. Eventually, you'll notice the pencil moving more freely and comfortably across the paper. These exercises will strengthen your basic control for perspective drawing and help you create more confident, cleaner lines. In short, these small practices can make a big difference in your drawing journey. Today, we learned what perspective is, why it's important, and how it makes a huge difference in architectural drawing. In the next lesson, we'll see how to use these basic lines in a real perspective application with one-point perspective, first steps in architectural space drawing. So don't forget to do your exercises. Goodbye.